The morning of Christmas felt both magical and tense. Laura held her daughter Emily's hand as they walked toward her sister's house, the snow crunching softly beneath their boots. The street was decorated with sparkling lights, wreaths on every door, and the scent of pine drifting in the cold air. Laura smiled, trying to ignore the tight knot forming in her chest, a warning she could not shake. Emily, 16, with her quiet ways and thoughtful eyes, seemed excited but nervous at the same time. She had picked out a modest green dress, something Laura had encouraged, wanting her to feel confident without needing flashy attention. Her brown hair was neatly braided, a tiny gold necklace catching the light. Laura squeezed her hand and whispered, "You look beautiful, Em." Emily smiled softly, the kind of smile that hid a little fear, the kind that said she was trying to be brave. As they stepped inside, the house smelled like cinnamon and fresh pine, laughter spilling from the kitchen, voices greeting each other warmly. Laura's sister welcomed them with hugs, her husband offered coffee, and the children ran around, their excitement filling the room. Everything seemed perfect. At least on the surface. Laura watched Emily move carefully, keeping her head high, trying to fit in with the energy around the room. Her niece and nephew squealed, opening gifts already stacked under the tree, while adults chatted about work and holiday plans. Laura noticed the smiles and the nods, the polite laughter that filled empty spaces. But she also noticed something else, subtle, almost invisible unless you were paying attention. The pauses, the quick glances, the whispered jokes that made Emily flinch just slightly. Then it happened. It started with a laugh, a loud one, the kind that demanded attention. Her brother Mark, holding a glass of eggnog, made a comment about Emily's dress. Not cruel, he thought, but teasing, joking. The kind of joke meant to get a laugh, but it landed wrong. Someone added that teenagers today cared too much about what they wore. The table laughed, a little too long, a little too loud. Emily froze, her fingers tightening around her napkin, her eyes dropping to the plate in front of her. Her smile disappeared, replaced with a tight-lipped attempt to hold back tears. Laura felt a cold wave of anger and heartbreak at the same time. Her heart ached as she watched her daughter shrink in the chair. The sound of laughter was no longer festive, it was sharp, cutting, almost cruel. Laura wanted to say something immediately, to stand up and stop it. But for a moment, she stayed quiet, her mind racing, heart pounding, calculating the right way to protect her child without exploding. She saw Emily push her chair back gently, excuse herself, and walk down the hall toward the bathroom. Laura felt her chest tighten as she watched, feeling helpless, angry, and ashamed all at once. In the hallway, Laura caught up to her daughter, wrapping her arms around her trembling shoulders. Emily tried to brush it off, whispering that she was fine, that it did not matter. But Laura could see the hurt, the humiliation, the way her daughter's shoulders sagged under invisible weight. She wanted to promise that no one would ever make her feel that way again. But she also knew that words alone were not enough. Back at the table, the conversation moved on as if nothing had happened. The laughter had faded, replaced by discussions of movies and plans, yet the emptiness of the moment hung in the air. Laura could not shake the sight of Emily's face, the flash of pain hidden behind polite manners. She realized that this Christmas would not be ordinary, that it would mark something important for both of them. The rest of the morning passed in a blur, gifts were opened, pictures were taken, and Laura forced herself to smile. Every laugh, every cheer, felt distant, almost hollow. She thought of all the times she had stayed quiet to keep peace, to avoid tension, to pretend nothing hurt her. She thought of all the times Emily had needed protection, kindness, and love, and how fragile those moments could be in the wrong hands. Laura noticed how Emily moved cautiously, avoiding conversations, answering questions softly, not wanting to draw attention. It was as if she had learned quickly that smiles and politeness could only shield her for so long. Laura felt a fire building inside her, a protective instinct that refused to let her daughter suffer quietly. The air of the house, once warm and inviting, now seemed charged, tense, as if it were holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. Mark continued talking, joking, completely unaware of the damage he had done. Other relatives glanced at each other, uncomfortable, but no one spoke, no one defended Emily. Laura realized in that moment how often people look away from cruelty, even when it is obvious. She felt a surge of determination, knowing that staying silent would be a betrayal of the love she felt for her daughter. As Emily returned from the hallway, her head held a little higher, eyes red but proud, Laura silently promised herself that this Christmas would not end in humiliation. Her mind raced with possibilities, strategies, words that could be said, actions that could be taken. She did not yet know how far she would go to protect Emily. But she knew one thing for certain. No one, not even family, would make her daughter feel small without consequence. And with that thought, Laura braced herself for what was coming next. This Christmas had just begun, and it would be a turning point. For Emily, for Laura, and for the family who thought this holiday was just another ordinary celebration. Because sometimes, the moments that look the smallest, like a joke over a dress or a whispered laugh, can change everything. And Laura knew she could not let this moment pass quietly. Laura followed Emily down the hallway, her heart tight, each step heavy with worry. She found her daughter leaning against the bathroom sink, staring at her reflection as if searching for a version of herself that hadn't been hurt. Emily's eyes were wide, her cheeks pink from embarrassment and tears she was trying not to shed. She whispered that it was nothing, that she was fine, but Laura knew the truth. For a moment, Laura said nothing, letting Emily speak first, listening to the shaky breath, the quiet trembling of hands that should have been carefree. Then she wrapped her arms around her, pulling her close, letting the warmth of her hug speak louder than words. Emily leaned in, resting her head against Laura's shoulder, trying to hide, trying to be brave. Laura whispered, softly at first, that it wasn't nothing, that what happened was real and it mattered. Back at the dining room table, the sounds of conversation and laughter continued as if the world had not just broken in a small, cruel way. Laura felt the sting of it, the sharp awareness that people can pretend everything is fine while someone is quietly suffering. She sat back down slowly, letting her fingers touch the edge of the table, steadying herself. Her mind raced with memories of holidays past, of times she had stayed quiet to avoid conflict, of moments she had chosen comfort over courage. Mark laughed again, louder this time, joking about how teenagers today were too sensitive, how a little teasing was harmless. Something inside Laura snapped. She could feel it, a heat rising in her chest, the kind of fire that only protective love can ignite. She stood up, tall and steady, her voice quiet at first, but firm, carrying a weight that made people stop and listen. Laura spoke carefully, every word deliberate, each one chosen to convey truth without anger. She told them that Emily was not a joke, not a lesson, not a target for laughter. She reminded them that kindness is not optional, that respect matters more than comfort. She spoke of dignity, of love, of how it felt to watch a child shrink under words meant to wound. The room fell silent, the kind of silence that fills space with tension. Eyes widened, glances shifted, plates stopped clinking. Mark opened his mouth, closed it, unsure how to respond. Other relatives shifted awkwardly, some ashamed, some quietly nodding. Laura's voice did not waver, but the room could feel it, the force of a mother refusing to stand by while her child was humiliated. Emily peeked from the hallway, seeing her mother standing tall, speaking with a courage she had not seen before. Her eyes filled with tears again, but this time, there was relief, a spark of pride. Laura could feel the bond between them strengthen in that moment, a silent promise that no one would ever treat her daughter that way again. Mark's wife, Susan, shifted uncomfortably in her chair, her face pale, guilt clear in her expression. A cousin quietly murmured an apology, soft but sincere. It was not perfect, and it would not erase the pain Emily had felt, but it was a start, a crack in the wall of indifference that had allowed the humiliation to happen. Laura returned to Emily, taking her hand gently, guiding her back to the room. Her voice was soft now, comforting, full of love. She told her daughter that she had nothing to be ashamed of, that she was brave and strong, and that she deserved respect. Emily nodded, her lips trembling, a tear slipping down her cheek, but she smiled, the kind of smile that carries relief, pride, and gratitude all at once. The rest of the afternoon moved slowly, awkwardly, but with a subtle shift in energy. Conversations were quieter, laughter more careful, eyes more aware. Laura noticed small gestures of kindness, fleeting apologies, moments of understanding. She realized that standing up for her daughter had changed the room, had shifted the balance, had created space for respect. Emily began to speak more freely, sharing small stories, laughing softly at the jokes that were harmless. Laura felt a quiet pride in seeing her daughter regain confidence, reclaiming a part of herself that had been hurt. She thought about the lessons this day had taught, about courage, about love, about the responsibility of protecting those who cannot always protect themselves. When it was time to leave, Emily hugged her mother tightly, whispering thank you. Laura hugged her back, holding on a little longer, savoring the warmth, the trust, the bond that had been tested and proven strong. As they stepped outside, the snow was falling gently, blanketing the world in white, soft and quiet. It felt like a promise, a new beginning, a chance to move forward without fear, without shame, without hiding. Laura reflected on what had just happened, on the courage it took to speak, on the love that made it necessary. She knew that some relatives would take time to understand, some might never fully change. But she also knew that Emily had learned something vital about strength, about dignity, about standing tall even when others try to bring you down. The drive home was quiet, not uncomfortable, but thoughtful. Emily leaned against the window, watching the snow, a small smile on her lips. Laura reached over, squeezing her hand, feeling the warmth, the connection, the unspoken promise that they were stronger together. She thought about Christmases past, about mistakes, about lessons learned too late. But this Christmas, she realized, would be remembered for a different reason. Because this Christmas had shown them that love was more than celebration, more than gifts, more than smiles. It was protection, courage, and the willingness to stand up when the world expected silence. Laura knew there would be more challenges ahead, more moments when she would have to defend her daughter. But for now, she let herself breathe, let herself feel pride, let herself appreciate the quiet triumph of doing the right thing. Emily, finally relaxed, leaned her head on her mother's shoulder, and Laura whispered softly, "You were brave today, Em, braver than anyone knew." And Emily smiled, the kind of smile that lights up the darkest moments, the kind of smile that says, "We are stronger than they ever imagined." The car ride home was quiet, but not uncomfortable. Snowflakes fell softly outside, melting as they touched the windshield, creating streaks that caught the streetlights' glow. Emily leaned her head against the window, eyes distant but calmer than they had been all day. Laura glanced at her daughter, feeling the tension in her shoulders ease, a slow sigh escaping her lips. The pain of humiliation had not vanished completely, but it had softened, replaced by a quiet pride, a sense of having survived, of having been seen and defended. Laura reached over and gently held Emily's hand, feeling the warmth, the heartbeat that was steadying itself after so many shocks. She spoke softly, telling her daughter that courage is not about never being afraid, but about standing up even when fear is present. Emily listened, nodding slightly, her eyes glistening, and Laura could see the trust shining there, the relief of knowing that someone had her back, fully and without hesitation. When they pulled into their driveway, the lights inside their house were warm, inviting, a stark contrast to the cold, tense atmosphere they had left behind. Emily moved slowly, thoughtful, carrying herself differently now, not smaller, not diminished, but careful, aware, and growing stronger. Laura followed, feeling a quiet sense of accomplishment, knowing that taking a stand had been worth every difficult moment. The house smelled of pine from the tree they had decorated earlier and the cookies they had baked the night before. It was ordinary, safe, and yet, after today, it felt like a haven, a place of healing, a place where respect and love were guaranteed. Over the next few days, messages trickled in from family members, some awkward, some sincere, some still avoiding acknowledgement. Laura read each one carefully, not responding to everything, but letting Emily see that people could change if they wanted to. She reminded her daughter that some relationships take time to repair, some may never fully recover, and that was okay. The most important thing was their bond, their trust, and their shared courage. Emily had already begun to carry herself with more confidence, speaking her mind softly but firmly, refusing to let anyone make her feel small again. At school, Emily's friends noticed a subtle shift. She laughed more freely in the cafeteria, raised her hand in class without hesitation, and even offered support to a shy classmate who had been teased. Laura watched her from a distance, pride swelling in her chest. She knew that this was the real victory, Emily learning that standing up for herself did not make her mean, that it did not have to hurt others, and that strength could be quiet, patient, and kind. One evening, as they sipped hot chocolate by the tree, Emily asked, "Mom, do you think I was too embarrassed back then?" Laura shook her head, smiling gently. "No, Em, being hurt is not a weakness, and feeling embarrassed does not mean you did anything wrong." Emily nodded, her eyes soft, a faint smile forming. "I felt small, but you made me feel bigger," she said quietly. Laura hugged her, holding her a little longer than usual, letting the warmth and love pass between them. It was a silent reassurance that no one else could diminish them. The following week, Laura received a call from Susan, Mark's wife, asking to meet for coffee. Susan apologized sincerely for her own silence and for not intervening. She admitted that she had realized how much harm words could do and that she wanted to make amends. Laura listened, careful, measured, but allowed a small smile to form. Not every apology was perfect, but it was a start, a step toward rebuilding trust and awareness. Emily's confidence continued to grow. She started volunteering at a local community event, helping younger kids with arts and crafts. Laura watched her from across the room, seeing her laugh freely, give instructions, and encourage shy participants. It was a reminder that resilience could inspire others, that strength could be contagious. Emily had transformed her hurt into empathy, her embarrassment into courage, and her silence into a voice that mattered. That Christmas, though painful in the moment, had created a lasting memory. Not of gifts or decorations, but of love, courage, and the power of standing up for what is right. Laura reflected on her own journey that day, the fear she had faced in speaking out, and the relief that had followed. She realized that love sometimes requires discomfort, sometimes demands confrontation, and often asks for bravery when it is hardest. But in the end, love was always worth it. One snowy evening, Laura and Emily stood by the window, watching the flakes drift down, covering the world in quiet white. Emily leaned against her mother, whispering, "I think I'm ready for next Christmas." Laura laughed softly, the sound full of warmth and relief. "Yes, Em, next Christmas will be different," she replied, knowing that they had grown stronger together, stronger than the judgment of others, stronger than fleeting embarrassment, stronger than fear. As they turned away from the window, the tree lights reflected in Emily's eyes, shining bright and full of hope. Laura knew that this was more than a holiday victory. It was a life lesson, a bond strengthened by courage, and a memory they would carry forever. She held Emily's hand tightly, promising herself silently that she would always protect, guide, and stand beside her daughter, no matter what. That Christmas had not ended with humiliation or silence. It had ended with dignity, pride, and love. And Laura knew that this was only the beginning. For Emily, for herself, and for every moment they would face together in the years to come. Sometimes, the hardest battles teach the deepest lessons. Sometimes, a mother's courage and a daughter's trust can change everything. And in that quiet, snowy night, Laura felt the warmth of victory, the glow of protection, and the unstoppable strength of love.